I'll share my screen in a second with the presentation, but I just wanted to say hello. This is me before I disappear again. Today it's all about trying to just give you a bit of a background on what hearing loss is, how much prevalence there is, what we can do about it, how you can recognise it, and then with a slant towards the emergency planning angle on it, which I'm not an expert in. I'll say from the outset, I'm an expert on hearing loss and what you can do about it, but I've had to do a bit of research to work out some of the things that's going on in other parts of the country that lend itself to the emergency planning angle of what you're trying to do. So I'll start sharing the screen now. And I'll just, is that everybody can see that? Is that all right? Nobody is having a problem. So I just wanted to say, I know it says action on hearing loss on the introduction and the invite you've probably got, but we've just literally changed back to RNID, how it always was for 100 years. So the marketing plan to get us more out there did not work. Well, we found out that after 8 years of using action on hearing loss, still people recognised RNID more, which was not surprising, to be honest. So it's us back again, RNID, different sort of shape logo and different colouring, but it's still the same charity that's been around for over 100 years. We are still, trying to help people be more inclusive and be included in everything. Hence why there's quite a lot of crossover with what you're trying to do with emergency planning, include everybody. We're trying to help people who are deaf, have hearing loss, and also tinnitus, because that can affect, obviously your day-to-day lives. We still offer information out in the community. We still do clinics with hearing aid repairs and things like that in different places around the country. We still fund biomedical research, and we have a membership base, and we fundraise, and we offer care and support to people who might be deaf or living with multiple disablements of some kind. But we're still generally the same charities doing the same thing, but we've got this big push now to be trying to get that message out on all levels, that we have to be inclusive of people to improve their quality of life and not just leave them out because they have a disability of some kind. So very much on that modern push now. This has only come out the last couple of weeks or so, so this is the brand new colouring and everything like that, so I haven't seen much of it yet, but here we go. Hearing loss is more common, I think, than people realise, and this is obviously just the known statistics, that 1 in 5 of us have some form of hearing loss, whether it's tinnitus based or whether it's deafness or hearing loss, which is obviously not deaf, but you've got somewhere on that range you have lost some of your hearing. So 1 in 5 of us, and that's obviously more prevalent in elderly people, because hearing loss, like eyesight, does generally degenerate as you get older. So in places where you're working, in Devon, rural Devon, you'll probably find that you've got a higher proportion of slightly more elderly people, so you're gonna, that number 1 in 5 probably goes 1 in 3, probably even half, in fact, some of the communities that you might be working in. So just be aware that a lot of people you're speaking to, if they look blankly at you sometimes, and you think, I never thought they could be just suffering from hearing loss and a bit embarrassed to say anything. Here's a map of the UK. We've got about 13 million people at the moment with some form of hearing loss, England and Scotland being the biggest two. In 2035, they reckon it's getting worse, basically. So these statistics might go up to 1 in 3 or 1 in 4, sort of generally, which is a bit of a worry. Why there's a trend that more people are getting more hearing loss, especially with all the, if you work on a building site and people give you things to wear now to protect your ears. But even though all the awareness is around and all the protective equipment, it still appears that the projection is showing that it's going up, not down, which is a shame. And I think it could be a lot of it, the kids who are going to be, 40 and 50-year-olds in the next couple of generations, they've been wearing these headphones all the time, and they don't give their ears a rest. And it's not only just the volume that you listen to things, it's actually how long you listen to them for. So something that's dangerous for a second or two because it's so loud, that's bad, obviously. But if you listen to something moderately but for a long time, that also damages your hearing. So you've got to be careful with your hearing. So how many people in the UK have unaddressed hearing loss? This is, quite a lot of people, because a lot of people don't come forward. It is approximately 4 more million people that we don't add to those statistics yet. How many people use British Sign Language, which is a whole nother language in its own right? Approximately 120,000. How many people can't hear well enough to use the phone? This is part of the emergency response information here. This is what we're trying to say. Not everybody can hear by phone. Approximately 500,000. I'd imagine these are all quite underestimated as well, especially in the rural areas. On average, how long does it take for someone to address their hearing loss? I.e., if you go to, your eyes start going a bit dicky, you go and see your opticians, I'd imagine, within the first year of it going wrong. But they've done studies to show that people address their hearing loss. It takes them roughly, on average, 10 years, because it's that stigma attached to getting older and, having hearing aids, and people just get a bit squeamish about it. So they do take a lot longer to actually do anything about it. There's 2 main types of hearing loss. One is the conductive type, and that's actually a physical, like a blockage in the ear or something, or an infection that stops the sound from actually getting down the tubes. So that's why it's called conductive, because it's about conducting the sound. That's fairly common, but not as common as the sensory neural one, which is the actual apparatus inside your ear actually getting more worn out. So you can see from the examples what can cause that. No end of different things. This is not even a very exhaustive list. There's probably another 20 common things that can cause those deficiencies to creep in. Obviously, the main thing is noise exposure is the common one, and aging. But you can see some medications. I know that, for example, some of the cancer medications can cause hearing loss, as if you haven't got enough on your plate. You come out of your treatment, you can't hear very well. I know some, when the doctor gives you a prescription drug for having a flu or anything, depending on who you are, it can affect your hearing. I've got a friend who's only just turning 50, and she had a strange fever one week, and she went to the doctors. It didn't go away. He gave her some drugs. After that, she's lost 40% of her hearing in one of her ears, and he said, I don't think we'll be able to get it back again. So you don't know when it's going to strike, but 99% of it is caused by aging or noise exposure. The rest of them are a little bit more rare, but it can happen. Everyone's hearing loss is unique as well, so you might find that some people lose it a little bit or slowly. Some people lose it overnight. Some people have a range of issues that's caused it, maybe 1 or 2 different issues at once. It really is, there's no one set thing for everybody. Some people will have hearing loss where they can correct it with a hearing aid. Some people, they might need a cochlear implant. Some people can wear different devices and things to help them. So again, it all depends on your background, which will be assessed by the audiologist to let you know which path you need to go on. So what can we do for the people? Well, to help us, the law is getting there. The Equality Act of 2010 came along, which opened the doors to all issues of equality, not just hearing loss, but all sorts of issues that came along. So that helped the movement move forward a bit. And another strand of government help that came out was the accessible information standard, which, for example, if you're a hospital, you now have a legal responsibility to make sure that the information that you're going to be giving patients, you can give it to them in different formats depending on what their needs are, and that is the accessible information standard. So you might find now on the back of an A5 brochure about cancer or hair loss or hearing loss or whatever it might be, you turn it over and look on the back, you might see the accessible information standards now, which will just give people that more help to sort of like read that or see that or hear that in whatever way and shape or form they need that information. So anyway, with the legal background to it, I'll go through some typical things that are obviously common sense to a lot of the people, but you have to sort of say it because it's the bread and butter really of communicating with somebody is the things on here. So generally, you sort of like make sure you face them face to face, because a lot of people use lip reading to get the gist of what you're saying, and your gesticulations, so when you're moving your hands or raising your eyelids or whatever it might be. So it's really important to face somebody so they can get those other cues. Speak clearly, but avoid shouting and making a bit of a do of it, because obviously a lot of the time it's not that they can't hear the volume, it's obviously they sometimes can't hear the pitch or the clarity of the words rather than the volume, which is why hearing aids are quite good, because nowadays being digital, they can actually, if you're deficient on a low frequency sound or deficient on a high frequency sound, they will just fill in those bits, not everything. So unlike the old days where everything used to get louder with the hearing aids, it's now that only certain pitches that you happen to be lacking in will be pumped up a bit louder. So it gives you that broad spectrum of sound that you need to hear words and things. So often you can shout at people and, you know, they'll take a step back because you think they need the volume, but they don't need the volume. It's the clarity. So to speak slowly and face them and you know, let them get all of the cues that they need from your face as you're speaking. That's the more important thing, really. But you still sometimes have to repeat if necessary. So don't get anxious if they need to go through it a couple of times. They often don't ask for it because they do get embarrassed about saying excuse me all the time. So you know, be a bit sensitive to sometimes if they look a bit embarrassed. Just make sure you help them along with that. Use plain language. Try not to use something that the brain is trying to work out what you're spinning a sentence together with. And because it's a bit like these automatic gearboxes where I think they're called double clutch gearboxes. So when you're in first gear, it already is trying to select second, anticipating your next move. And your brain is a bit like that. When it's hearing the beginning of a sentence, it's a bit like predictive texting as well. It will try and think what is the possible things that this person is just about to come out with, you know. So always speak in plain language, because if you throw really weird words in, the brain would not have predicted that word, and so it can trip people's thought process up. So just use simple language, again, without being condescending and using childlike language. It's just more about just using plain and simple language to get the point across. A lot of people will complain that it wasn't you that wasn't doing anything right, but it's the background noise. That's the biggest complaint I hear from people, is that the din of things going on in the background was simply blocking out what they could hear, and it confuses the brain. So if you can move to just an area of the same room that may be a little bit quieter, that will help a lot of people. Simple gestures. Do you want a cup of tea, and all the different, without even knowing any sign language or anything complicated, but just simple hello, thumbs up, that type of thing can also help get that message across. If it gets a bit desperate, try writing things down. You can do it the old-fashioned way by just literally getting a scrap of paper and showing them, or nowadays you can get your tablet out or write it on a whiteboard if you're in a different type of environment to that, or even show them on your mobile phone, or anything really, as long as they can read the words. And if they ask you to and they're happy with it, speak to either the person that they happen to be with, a family member, the daughter that's come along with them, but ask first, because it does seem a lot of people who are deaf or hard of hearing, they'll ask the person next to them, missing them out altogether, and that makes them feel undervalued and like they're not even there. So it's best to say, look, I know you're having difficulties, but do you want me to speak to your daughter first, and she can relay it when you've got a bit more time, or be a bit more sensitive about it, you know. So I tried to think, well, how, you know, in an emergency situation, you've got to know what sort of options are open to be able to communicate with people. And again, there is not just one method, unfortunately. You've got to use the tools in the tool bag that suit your particular needs in your community. But I brought the main ones to talk about so that we can just sort of, you know, bring it out onto the table, what it is that you could put in your tool bag, basically, because telephones would be the easiest way of getting a message around to somebody, but when you're deaf or hard of hearing, sometimes you don't even hear it ring, let alone actually be able to answer it and chat on the phone. So we have to look at different things. So obviously emailing is a great way, and lots of people, even very elderly people, know how to email now. There's not many people that are such technophobes or that they don't know how to use a simple email nowadays. So you'll catch quite a lot of people with emails, and similarly with on your text with the phone. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that later. There's something specific on that. There is such things called text phones as well. So it's like a home telephone which has a screen on it. So you can actually get a message to them by talking, but they'll get that message in writing. So it you know, translates it into writing, so they can read it even if they can't see it. And Relay UK is BT's. It's been called so many names over the years, I can't even remember all of the different names now, but it's been all sorts of different names, but it's still the same service. Basically, somebody who wants to get a message through to somebody that's deaf or hard of hearing, they can ring the operator, or the Relay UK operator at BT, tell them that they need to get this message through to somebody. The person then rings the deaf person or the hard of hearing person, starts the conversation going, takes the message from the person that's rung up, translates it into text while they're, you know, while he's speaking or she's speaking, and that comes out on the text phone on a screen so they can read it. Like, so there's only a second delay, so it's not too bad. You can have a proper conversation, but the person that's typing away is very quick and very efficient, done it a million times. So basically, dear Joan, you know, I want to meet you at the park on Saturday. The person's typing away, it pops up on the screen. The person at the other end can then reply, and the person speaks back to the original caller. So it's a fairly simple, obviously, relay system, hence why it's called Relay UK. So that's another thing you can have set up. And you can also have British Sign Language is another way of communicating with people with hearing loss or hard of hearing. I mean, obviously not everybody's going to be able to sign, even if they're deaf, but most deaf people are sign language users, and you will find some people in your community. Again, I can't say, because you're all coming from different communities, I can't say what's happening in your community specifically, but these, like I say, are the tools that you can use to communicate, other than calling up, ringing up, or just knocking on the door and trying to shout a message at them. There is other ways of doing it. Just a little note here to remember that if someone's phone number, these two numbers here, 03306 or 7777, this means that they do already, and they've registered with that relay service to receive calls that way on their text phone in their living room or wherever it might be. So you can also nowadays, in the modern age, have things relayed through to your smartphone or tablet or even your computer. So like I say, if somebody's written down their number for you, give me a call on this, and it starts with those two numbers, you'll know automatically that they're using those devices. So you will go through that relay system. Other ways to communicate, again, I had to scratch my head and think of all the different options for you. There's obviously, you can go to qualified professionals such as BSL interpreters and what we call speech to text reporters, electronic note takers. They all do a similar thing. They all take the person that's speaking, puts it through their machine or whatever they do with it, and give it to the person that's deaf or hard of hearing in a way that they can understand it. So a BSL interpreter would, as you've seen on the COVID reports we get on the news all the time now, there's often somebody stood next to somebody interpreting what they're saying to everybody else that can use BSL. But speech to text reporters can take somebody's words, type it as they're speaking, and it can be coming up on a screen. You know, if you can't BSL, you can't hear them, or you can't understand BSL, you still can't understand what's going on. So if somebody's typing it verbatim as they speak, it's just literally like subtitles coming up. So there are professionals that do that. But if you do engage with one of these professionals, I'd recommend that you go through the National Register of Communication Professionals. They are registered. They do have a standard to adhere to. It's a very complicated, you know, system. A lot of different complicated ways of interpreting things. So it's definitely best to go through the NRCPD, as it's known. Now, we did speak a little bit earlier of the SMS service. So I just wanted to focus on that a bit more, because I thought that might be something that you could preempt an emergency with and have that already set up in the off chance that an emergency does happen. You've got some sort of a response. So as it says here, it lets you know, deaf, hard of hearing or speech impaired people send SMS text messages to a UK 999 service, where it gets passed to either the police or the ambulance or the fire rescue, Coast Guard, any of those sorts of things. Well, it goes through to all of them at once, I think. By sending the SMS to the 999, you can call for help, and any emergency service that will be able to help you. So depending on what it is you've got a problem with, you will only be able to use this service if you have already registered with it. So you need to register with the emergency SMS. It's said like that, emergency SMS. And to register that service, you just literally text register with inverted commas to 999. You will get a reply, and then you just follow the instructions that they send you, and then click on the website link, you know, if you want to have a look around and things like that. So basically you literally type in on your phone register and send it to 999. They will get you set up on this SMS text service, so just in case you need to get a message out to them. But you've got to remember that it's not really for some of, you know, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of an example, but it's not meant as a kind of a low-key communication aid with, I don't know, the local WA or something like that. It's meant if the life is at risk, or if you're seriously ill and you need an ambulance, someone is, you know, someone else that you've just seen has been knocked over and, you know, lying there in a puddle of blood or something like that. It's about crime that's happening right there and then. A fire's just, you know, somebody's trapped in a fire, somebody's missing at sea, all those types of things. So it's not meant as a communication aid within a community, but more of an actual emergency, as it says, emergency SMS. So I was thinking about how, you know, in your community, if an emergency does happen and you've got a group of volunteers doing what they can to, you know, let the community know what is happening, you could use some of that stuff that I've just talked about to build into your processes, and you could set up your own kind of one SMS message could go out to a number of people at once, all in one big mail-in shot or something like that. You could obviously do it by email, but if it's in the middle of the night when people's computers are off or their phones are switched off, even if you email them out, not everybody will know, you know, that that's come through. So it is a bit hit and miss, because you've got to rely on the fact that technology is aiding you, and if that technology is switched off, you still won't be able to get through. So it's a case of the Welly Brigade going around knocking on doors, which is going to be tricky. If you're hard of hearing, you might not even hear somebody knocking on the door. It is a bit of a, like I say, a mixed bag of tools, and you've got to see which one suits your community best. And on that note, another thing that came through was that you've probably seen it on many TV programs, but people carry with them like a medical information card. And the card will help, give important information about that person to whoever finds them first, or to whoever knocks on the door first. And if they do get them out of bed and they can hear you coming, or the light flashes, they've got a doorbell that vibrates inside or something like that, so they actually do get aroused by your knocking on the door, they could bring that card to the door, which will explain to anybody that comes to the door, firstly, if it's an emergency, tell me by doing this. If so, remember I'm deaf, or I've got hearing loss, or I need to get my hearing aids, and this, that, and the other. So just give that person's particular details so that the card can just be a very quick, because nobody wants to be hanging around if there was an actual emergency on. So the card can speed up basically that, I'm Mr. Bloggs, I've got hearing loss, I need interpreters, I've got a pacemaker, I've got an allergy to penicillin, anything, you can put anything on those cards. So if it suits your community, you could actually do a little program where you go around knocking on doors, finding out people that system might be suitable to. So if you do eventually have to go out there in the middle of the night in your wellies and your raincoat, you'll be able to at least know that a proportion of those people are kind of ready, and you won't have to think on your feet there and then. So that's another angle you could come at it from. So that's what I pulled together in terms of the emergency stuff. But I just thought, whilst we've got a few more minutes, I just thought I'd just quickly talk about hearing aids and assistive equipment, because they're another potential thing that will help you. Hearing aids, like I said, can help your community basically be a bit more resilient to hearing loss, because obviously the more people you've got in your communities that have got some sort of remedial efforts going on with their hearing loss, the less likely they're going to come into communication problems. So if you could maybe do a wholesale push in your communities to, if you are hard of hearing, remember, in an emergency, it's going to be hard to get, your attention. So please remember, if you need a hearing assessment, please go see your doctor, which will put you through to the audiology people, which will get you a hearing aid. And then in the emergency situation, you won't be so difficult to contact or hear what's going on. So probably a little push in the right direction wouldn't go amiss from your teams or your volunteers. And secondly, if people want to enhance their hearing aids, which basically, like I said before, don't make everything louder, just the bits that you're lacking. And so, for example, in terms of an emergency situation, and I find this myself, alarms for smoke and things like carbon dioxide and things like that, they're always set like a high-pitched beeping noise. And honestly, if you've got tinnitus, which is a high-pitched sort of like beeping or screaming, or sort of like, all sorts of different noises tinnitus can make, if you're listening out for a high-pitched beep or something like that, it might be being drowned out by the tinnitus. So sometimes when I'm walking in the countryside and I'm desperately trying to hear the birds singing, and I stand for a second or two and I think, am I hearing the birds singing here, or is it tinnitus? And because it does sound the same in my ears anyway. So other people, they might not be able to hear alarms going off because either they're not got the high-pitched range within their hearing ability to hear high-pitched sounds, or their tinnitus is drowning it out. So people should think about maybe using a vibration pad instead of just sound to help, be able to hear things. Whilst I'm on that, if you ring your local fire brigade, I suppose they all merged now into Devon, Somerset and Cornwall, haven't they? All in one big fire brigade.
Somerset we've got.
Yeah, so whoever that is, there'll be a helpline, and you can ring them and say, you know, I'm Mr. Smith, or I'm Mrs. Jones, or I know Mr. Smith or Mrs. Jones. I think they could do with a home assessment. They'll come down to your home and do a home assessment for free. And as long as you're over 50 or 55, 50 or 55, can't remember, but they'll tell you either way. And they'll, or have some form of a disability, they'll come down for free and they'll fit different smoke alarms and things like that, all for free for them. So in an emergency, they'll have at least a little bit more hope that they'll be able to be aware of what's going on. And now, if you say to them at that time, "Oh, I've also got hearing loss and I can't hear the alarms going off even when they're fitted," they do have the facility to actually, instead of giving you a hearing alarm, they can give you a vibration pad, which is just a thin cushion that goes underneath your pillow at night. So if the fire or whatever it is happens at night, and you haven't got your hearing aids in, and you can't hear those high pitched frequencies, the pad goes off and alerts you to something going on. And then if you wake up, and then you can obviously see the lights flashing or whatever it is going on. So they'll do all that for free. So that's another thing to tell your community about. So the more you can sort of do to bolster the community around you, the easier it's going to make you in an emergency situation. So that's hearing aids. And then there are things called assistive equipment that you can buy anywhere that stocks the sort of things. Our charity used to actually sell them directly from our charity at a very small price, not to make a profit, of course, just to let people know this stuff is around. So you can get like personal listeners, TV listeners, different smoke alarms and alerting devices, doorbells that flash as well as make sound, telephones that have boost buttons and much louder decibels, and lights and vibrations as well, mobile phones that give off more lights and things so that you don't have to just rely on your ears. And we closed that department down because we just couldn't afford to run it. But what happened was we struck up a partnership with a big supplier, a UK supplier of assistive equipment called Con Evans. They're a family-run business that have been going for many years now. So basically what they did, they took over our online shop. So when anybody goes to our website now and looks up, I want to buy assistive equipment, it'll just direct you through to the Con Evans website and take you straight there, where you can see the whole range of different things that are on offer. If you've got hearing loss, tinnitus, or deafness, there are hundreds of different digital devices that you can buy, that in any given situation you can buy a piece of equipment that can help you hear that particular thing. So you can go right down to specifics and get a device that you can fit to a television that will send wireless signals straight either into your hearing aids themselves, if they've got Bluetooth, or the T setting, for the loop setting on the hearing aids. You can connect them that way. So it literally, your hearing aids become the headphones in a way. There's those types of specific things, but there's also broad things called just like personal listeners, which will look like a kind of remote control off a telly or something like that. And basically, once you put the batteries in and connected them up to your hearing aid with or headphones with the Bluetooth, or you just put headphones on, again, it basically has like a bionic ear on the device. So wherever you put that device, it could be in front of a radio, it could be at a dinner party, you can leave it in the middle of the table, or you can put it in front of the telly, or just give it to your friend to wear in their top pocket. And that signal will then boost what's happening in your environment and come right into your hearing aid instead. So there's those more general hearing devices, or there is specific hearing devices. And I'd advise anybody that's interested in telling their community to sort of, like I say, bolster themselves up for an emergency, just to think about, what do they actually lack? What's their problem? What is their barrier to hearing? Can it be solved by actually getting a hearing aid, or using a hearing aid that they've put in the top drawer and forgot about? That's the first thing to really look at. Secondly, is there some bit of technical equipment that you can buy for less than 50 quid, most of it, that will enhance that particular thing that it does. And thirdly, I think, is to get the emergency services to come and do a home assessment. That's another good thing to do. And then fourthly, all of these different communication tips that we've gone through today. So that is really all I needed to say at this stage. I thought I'd leave a fair bit of time just for any questions that came through, but there's not many people on the call, so you might not have that many. But if there's anything specific that you think I haven't covered that you was desperate to know, I'll try and answer it now if I do know the answer.
Thank you, Jason. I thought that was really, really interesting and important as well. And I think it prompted me to think about all of the other disabilities as well that we probably do a little bit more about when we're considering emergency planning. Does anybody have any questions for Jason? Not at all.
No.
I think that's down to the fact that you covered everything in such good detail, Jason.
Thank you.
Hang on, Kirsty.
Hello, I'm so sorry. I'm used to Teams. I couldn't find the unmute button quick enough. I just want to thank you, Jason. That was really, really helpful. And just picking up on what was said then, actually, our parish council are looking at our emergency response plan going into winter. And we're working on a huge engagement piece with our community. We're quite a small parish, but we're looking at people to identify whether or not they would consider themselves vulnerable or needing extra support. And we're mindful that not everybody likes to admit if they need help occasionally. So I guess what we're trying to do is put a catalogue together of all the support that could be available and making it accessible in as many ways as we can. But have you got any tips with regards to kind of that engagement piece? Because even hearing loss is such a sensitive issue. Not everybody sometimes is even willing to admit that they've got a hearing aid. No. So we want to be as positive as we can and engaging as we can, but without feeling like, you know, people are going to be, you know, putting a red mark on themselves, for example, as silly as that sounds.
Yeah, and it's something I've come across myself because my day job, if you like, before COVID, I was out in the community, mostly rural places were a little bit harder to get to, not have so many mainline services, to actually get that message to normalise hearing. Instead of making glasses have been normalised, nobody gives a monkey if you have to wear glasses one day, but you start talking about hearing loss, and for some reason they just don't like being labelled deaf, hard of hearing, whatever, and it's very difficult to get people to come forward and admit that they've actually got a problem. So at the drop-ins that I've run, you do have to sort of to a degree coax it out of them a bit, and luckily we've got some very good volunteers that know how to kind of approach it so it normalizes it. Just talk about it matter of fact. It's no big deal. Also try to take away that kind of misunderstood stigma that's attached with hearing loss, which is, in the 70s there was these great big, you know, banana shaped hearing aids that you could spot a mile off, but nowadays, you know, they're getting so small you honestly really wouldn't know that anybody's got anything on, even if they are that worried about what they look like. So I would definitely advise them to, if they're thinking about it, don't be shy, just go see the doctor. They'll send you down to the audiology. They'll fit you up with a nice free hearing aid, which are still free at the moment, thank God, but you never know when that might end. And they are much, much smaller, and they don't overwhelm you like they used to in the old days with everything you just used to get blasted out, and you wouldn't be able to turn them up or down. They were awful things. But nowadays you've got program settings, so if you're in a busy office or a busy room, you can put them on setting number 3, and if you're just general use, you can leave them on number 1, and so you can tailor that just by pressing a little button that goes round in a kind of a loop. It just keeps going 1 2 3 1 2 3 all the time, and you can put it on something that is more specific to that particular need, which you can agree with the audiologist before you even have it put on there. So again, they can be tailored much more to what you need, and they're much smaller, and you can have a volume button as well, so you don't have to have it very loud if that's going to bother you. They're easy to clean and free. The batteries are all still free. So there's no miracle answer to what you're asking, but if you try and take away that, like, normalize it, but take away the stigmas and make it sound much more easy than it used to be, it might just make people think again and think, actually, I should really grow up a bit. I'm not a young spring chicken anymore. I do need them. So, for the sake of having something small behind my ears, it's worth going for. Now, another thing that I do in those situations, and it's awful in some ways, but it does help. It gives me a bit of a stick sometimes, which you didn't used to. Other than what I've just said, you wouldn't be able to do anything else. You just have to convince them that it's fine. Let's go for it. But nowadays, there's some serious studies being done between the relationship between hearing loss and dementia, and unfortunately, it's clear now, all the scientists agree, that by leaving your hearing, even a mild hearing loss, I'm talking 5–10%, very, very small to moderate hearing losses, if you leave it unchecked in your earlier years, when you first start getting it, mostly after about 50 onwards, you sort of get the normal pattern of hearing loss. If you've had a motorbike accident when you were 20, it might come on a bit quicker, but for the general population, it will start coming on, if you're going to get it, sort of around 55 onwards. If you leave that unaddressed for quite a while, your chances of getting dementia later in life just go through the roof. It's literally 5 to 10 times more likely to get dementia later in life if you do not address your hearing loss early in life. So although, like I say, it's not the first thing I would come out with if I'm having a difficult customer that doesn't want to know, it's probably not the first thing I'd bash them over the head with, but it's worth throwing into the conversation, that there's been a big study. In fact, they actually tested 5,000 people, of men, women, everybody. They grouped them into people that have hearing loss who didn't do anything about it, and 2,500 people that did do something about it, and that's where those statistics come from. 5 times more likely to get dementia if you have low level unaddressed hearing loss, and something like 10 times more likely if you've got moderate hearing loss. So not doesn't have to be that drastic, but what happens is the part of the brain that processes sound through your audio nerve goes up to your brain, the part of your brain that grabs that signal and turns it into some sort of brain signal that you turn into words, the same part of the brain is responsible, they now found, that where dementia sparks from. So it's basically a part of the brain that they say if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So by stimulating the auditory nerve using hearing aids or assistive devices, you're exercising that part of the brain, keeping it healthy and staving off the effects of getting dementia. So try all of those things. Again, tools in your toolbox.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Kirsty?
It did. It's just finding the different ways of engaging, and actually I'm gonna go and look on the website and just look at the toolkits that are available, because actually just even promoting those I think will be really useful. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I've always done them at my drop-in hub, so actually grabbing people as they walk by. Excuse me, sir, madam, have you or your family got any hearing issues? And you'll often find that the wife will come over and say, yeah, my husband's got a problem, but he won't do anything about it. And then the husband's in the background, laughing it off and everything like that. And I have a laugh with them, don't get me wrong. I get them so their guard's down, and then I give them a little bit more of a talking to and say, well, it can be quite serious. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? It's not difficult anymore, and just sort of really engage with them on that level. I mean, it also, like Ivy Bridge, for example, they hold a yearly health extravaganza day where all different charities to do with any sort of health issues turn up. I always go along to that and grab people coming by. So just try all sorts of different engagement venues and ways of getting people there. You know, it's sort of like I know a prize for the best so and so, and it's just all a facade to get them in there. It doesn't really matter how you get there, but you've got to get in front of them and you know, give them the facts really. So I do talks to the U3A and you know, the Women's Institutes and things like that, just to, again, try all different methods to get that message out there really.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Kat has just asked whether you have any resources or particular information that you could point us in the direction of that would help underline the importance of when you're using some sort of assisted device, that you don't just amplify everything. So she's talking about an alert on a computer, that if you're getting an alert through on a computer, that it doesn't just make everything loud, that it just plays one sound louder.
No, I don't think there's a resource that would be that specific about some, you know, an issue like that. So I can't really point you in that direction, but no, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. But what I'll do is in a second, if I can share my screen again in a minute, at the end of the presentation, there was just some how you can get hold of the stuff from the RNID, different websites and all sorts of things you can use as your you know, online resources. And there's loads of information on our website about all sorts of things. So you can just have a quick dig through that as well, on any issue you've got, whether it's tinnitus, hearing loss, deafness, and all the different subdivisions of the issues that come up with that. Illnesses, you know, all the different medical breakthroughs are on there. Anything you can imagine is on there. So there'll be kits that can help you there.
Thank you. Could you share that with us now?
Yeah.
And while Jason shares that, does anybody else have any further questions that they would like to ask?
Hi, it's Diana here. I've got a quick question for me. Hi, Jason. That was really helpful. Thank you very much. And I've learned a lot more than I thought I might, to be fair. I'm not very up to speed on this topic, so thank you. One thing that I'm astounded by is that number of, you know, the link between even a low-level hearing loss and dementia in later life. I've never heard that before, so I don't know whether it's common knowledge to others, but maybe that's just my ignorance. But I was thinking in our community of maybe trying to do something after we've resolved COVID in some way, trying to do something about dementia and trying to raise some more awareness around that. And I see a link between obviously then low-level hearing loss and dementia, because I think both of them are kind of unspoken things at the very early stages, perhaps. So do you, is there a recommendation that, you know, would you recommend that we try and address maybe the two things together? Is that how it's kind of positioned, maybe with the dementia charities and those kind of resources, as well as the RNID, or is it not that joined up yet? Sorry if that was a garbled question, but just thinking out loud. Thank you.
Yeah. I've been through this myself, because when it was first released, and if you go to the Alzheimer's Society and look up their website and then search link with hearing loss or something like that, you'll see probably there's been subsequent studies done as well, and it's all on the Lancet report, you know, the medical report, the Lancet, LANCET, it's all in there as well. So you could just spend 10 minutes googling a few things and you'll get everything you need there. It's all well established now, and like I say, this was when I first found this out, it was about 2.5 years ago. So I'd imagine they were basically at that stage looking to fund a lot more studies, so there could be even more up to date now, but that the early indications were definitely quite strong in that link. So I have had, you know, a couple of conversations with the Dementia Society and things like that in Plymouth to try and get us to do joint talks and things like that, but I think it's been a bit bitty because there's no one strategy taking this forward to link the two issues together. So, but I can't see any reason why, if you wanted to just Google local dementia charities and ask them to, one of them will agree to come and give a talk at your event and give you all the latest lowdown on it. like I said before, I don't want it to use it to scare people, but at the same time, you have to, in a way, because it is quite scary to think I'm going to end up with dementia, and all I had to do really was to have got a hearing aid or something. You have to use it to your advantage without scaring people, because you can just, oh no, I don't want to know, you know, I don't want to know anything about it, I'm off now. So you've got to kind of coax them into listening, make it interesting without scaring them off altogether. So I would definitely look down that route. So you could do a joint event to link them together, because like you say, still a lot of people don't get that message. And so the more things like that you can do, the better. I mean, if it was the old days where I can get out and about, I wouldn't mind coming and talking to your groups and give them the information that they need myself, because that's something I used to do before COVID.
It was like you'd read my mind.
Yeah.
Maybe hopefully one day.
Yeah, maybe one day. But in the meantime, there's definitely the dementia charities will have something, I imagine now, that links the two together and have something a bit more formal that they can maybe deliver to you or give you or send you some brochures on, things like that, or some spiel that might help you deliver it yourself. So I'd definitely just have a Google at the different charities that are around this general area to see if anybody's got any more detailed information.
Thanks very much, Jay.
But anyway, here's the information that I've got about the different ways of contacting Action on Hearing Loss. Action on Hearing Loss, RNID, and our website and things like that. So it's just www.rnid.org.uk, sort of, as you would imagine. And then if you're, another important thing is we have an information line on the top left there, and you can literally call that information line about anything to do with hearing loss. This literally is anything. You could have a medical issue that you're thinking about. It could be my hearing aid's broken, what do I do? It could be what's the latest government guidelines on COVID and hearing loss, on face masks, on up-to-date current things that are going on in the news every day. Or it could be technological breakthroughs, you know, different pills that are being trialed, literally anything you can imagine, government views on hearing loss, what we're doing to combat this, that and the other, it's all on there. So give them a ring, you can ask them any question at all, and they will give you a response. So you could even be a student looking to find the link between dementia and hearing loss, and somebody on the information line will be able to give you the right information. So if you're putting anything together, or you're thinking of delivering something, you need something a bit more to deliver, something more specific or something, give the information line a call. They will be able to help you.
Thank you. Anne, did you want to just...
Yeah, please. I just wanted to sort of say that through Living Options Devon, we're able to provide support to individuals, and we can do that. I mean, for example, we have a British Sign Language counsellor. So if anybody is wanting to have counselling services in British Sign Language, we can do that. We also can provide sort of information and advice around equipment and that kind of thing. So there is, you know, we're sort of on the ground within Devon, Plymouth and Torbay at the end of the phone if you know, people do want to just ring us and have a chat with us. So I can put our new website details on. I'm just trying to get it up at the moment, but I can put that into the share box. You bear with me.
Yeah, if you can just pop that into the chat, that would be,
yeah, will do.
I think. Thank you. Whilst Anne does that, are there any further questions or comments?
If anybody's got any other groups outside of this group that wants, you know, doesn't have to be about any emergency response, just general hearing loss awareness, the dementia link, anything really, I can put a bespoke, you know, presentation together and at the moment deliver it virtually. But if one day down the line we can do it physically, you just have to let me know, and I'll come out and do talks in the community as well.
That's great, thank you. And have you popped that link in there?
Just about to do it. It's my typing, which is so rubbish.
Okay.
Right in there.
If anybody wants to quickly copy that link, also perhaps take a screenshot of this page, although we will be uploading and sharing the presentations, it won't be immediate. So if you want to just take a picture or a screenshot of this page, just so you've got that information. Really, thank you, Jason. That was really, really interesting. I really enjoyed listening to that. For everybody else, thank you for coming along. Thank you for participating. And we have 3 more Resilience Forum sessions tomorrow. If you haven't yet joined them, you can register for those on the Devon Communities Together Resilience webpage. And there's a button that links you to the Resilience Forum sign up. Thank you so much, everybody.
Lovely. Thanks very much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.